Hey guys, this is Verneer for cardrunners.com, and I'm bringing you a video of Hey, It's Clay's play. Let's get started. We have a limper from a weakish player. We are in the cutoff. I definitely like raising this Jack 8 suited here, just to take initiative of the hand, and to put some money in the pot in position, isolate ourselves against the weaker player. So he ends up putting in this weird limp raise, but it's like a min raise. So obviously we flat because a lot of good things can happen in position. And he ends up betting $1 here. Very frequently I would end up just flatting here because we're in position. But he does still have quite a bit of money behind. So I almost think that it would seem more bluffy if we end up raising here. If he has an overpair, he's never going to be folding. But if he has a hand like Ace King or Ace Queen, I still don't think he's going to be folding. So it's such a dry board, and we're in position. So those two things kind of make me lean, or I should say, those two things are arguments for flatting here. But the fact that he's got quite a bit of money left behind, and it is such a dry board, that raising almost seems bluffy. I wouldn't raise a lot. I would raise like 275. So I think $5 is too much. So yeah, so I would raise just a little bit less to make it seem bluffy. Obviously, it's none of it matters if he has, an overpair, because he's going to continue. But I don't think I would raise it less because we are in position and we are still going to be able to get all the money in on later streets. So I want to give him some rope to hang himself. I want to give him the price to continue with a lot of different hands there. Pocket threes in the big blind. We end up facing a raise from the early position player. I think this is a pretty straightforward call. Like I would end up calling here 100% of the time, with hands all the way up to probably 10-10. I might even call with jacks there. The player's playing 25-22, so he's definitely playing a lot of different hands. On this kind of a flop, I would definitely check, and I think I would end up check. When we check raise, we definitely rep a hand like threes or fours. On the other hand, when we end up check calling, we rep a much wider range, just any kind of ace X, but the player might end up shutting down. So what I might do here is I might end up check calling the flop, and then I might end up leading some turns depending on the turn. Just because if we end up check raising here, then most of the time he's not going to have an ace, and he's just going to end up folding. So our hand is so strong, I would rather give him some room to catch up. If on the other hand he has an ace, then he's obviously not going to be folding. But we've got to play against the range of all possible hands that he could have, and I think most of those hands don't include an ace and are going to I think he's going to be continuation betting this flop with like all his hands, and we're so strong that I think check calling is the best option against this full range. So I like the call, and I think I would end up leading the turn for like $2 as kind of a blocker bet, because I can see him checking back some of his marginal aces. So again, this is a spot where I think that you can go and hold a manager, take a look at situations in which you end up check calling the flop and then leading the turn. I think this leads itself pretty good towards that, just because in that spot, when you end up, if he has a draw, then he's going to be checking this turn, I think, frequently. Well, I guess if he has a draw, if he has a hand like King Jack or King Queen or Queen Jack, he might end up trying to double barrel this turn. But he might also just take a free card. But if we end up betting, then he's definitely going to end up calling. So I think he's just going to be checking this turn very frequently with one pair type hands and even weaker, like aces that are not very strong that just want to force a showdown. So now I might end up, honestly, I might end up check raising this river. If we lead out now, it just seems like we have, like an ace jack, ace queen at the weakest. So I think if we're going to try to get value from some kind of a weaker ace, then I think check raising the river makes the most sense. It's kind of a weird line, but see, this whole hand demonstrates the difficulty of playing out of position. It's just difficult to get paid when you're playing out of position, which is why I think people should implement more leading on both flops and turns as the pre-flop caller. So if the guy ends up folding, and more than likely he ended up having either air or a hand like sixes through nines or whatever. Ace 2 suited on the button. Definitely a raise, especially with a weaker player in the small blind. And we end up flopping top pair on a board with a lot of different draws. So sometimes I would check this, but not against this player. Against this player, I would end up leading. I would end up betting here. 75 cents is fine. He flats. The 5 changes nothing. I would just keep it up. I would bet like $2 here. So far, pretty straightforward hand. And in the way it's going down. Most likely hand here that the player has is a draw, and I think he's just going to continue calling with a draw. The 5, once again, changes nothing. And pretty good run out for us. At this point, I would bet smallish to try to get value from a jack. So I might bet like 250 here, just because I think if he has an ace, we're chopping with most aces. If I had a hand that I could beat if I had a hand like ace queen or ace king that would have a higher kicker than the jack, I might overbet here. I might bet like $8. But at this point, I want to just get value from a jack. So I would probably bet like 250. So he ends up betting 250 himself. No reason to raise, no reason to fold. I think that's a pretty easy call. And yeah, so it would have gone down the same way. Like I said, I think I would have ended up betting right around what he ended up betting. So he blocker bet. Yeah, pretty straightforward hand. Ace 3 offsuit on the button. We have a limper. Definitely popping him up. Isolates him, gives us initiative. Just all kinds of good reasons. So this is the epitome of a dry flop. And in this situation, I just think there's so much more value in checking to let the person catch up just a little bit. Maybe puts a flush draw out there, maybe put a straight draw out there. we're just not afraid of anything. If he has a hand like King Jack or King Queen, maybe let him catch a pair. So maybe just put him in a position where he's going to end up bluffing because he thinks that we're weak. So I don't like c-betting here. I think we're just going to get folds way too frequently. And I think this is a great spot in position to check behind, let him catch up a little bit, and then get value on the turn and river. We're not going to be getting 3 streets of value, so might as well let him catch up and get them on the turn and the river. Ace 2 suited in the small blind versus a aggressive regulars button raise. So Hades Clay ends up 3-betting here, which I think is perfectly fine. I don't like calling the small blind there, and so yeah, I think 3-betting is fine. I mean, a suited ace, especially a low suited ace, is it's a pretty good hand to do that with. Now, in general, I'm not crazy about this table. Looks like we've got 21-21 player, 26-21, 25-14, 29-17. I'm guessing the 29-17 player is kind of the mark at the table, but yeah, I mean, just no one really strikes me as just being an obvious mark, and I think increasingly game selection becomes more and more important. So Russ Terra ends up calling, and we flop top pair with a backdoor flush draw. So in this spot, in general, I think betting is okay, but I much prefer just check calling. We can represent a hand like kings or queens or jacks that we might not want to bet on this flop. So the guy ends up checking behind. Doesn't really tell us anything. I mean, he could have an ace and check it back for deception. He could have air. At this point, I think I would go ahead and bet. So Hades Clay ends up betting, and I don't mind checking again either. So we're just not looking to get too much value from a hand like this on a flop like this. So I think 3-betting is perfectly reasonable, and I like kind of the more cautious play on this flop. Unless you have a lot of history, there's just no reason to go nuts and play for stacks. With this hand on this flop in this situation. So I think this was played well. So this is a pretty straightforward hand, but I still want to highlight 2 things. So this is the hand we just played, the ace 2 suited hand against the Russ Terra player, and now we pick up ace queen offsuit. This is a pretty standard call pre-flop, given the dynamics and just given the hand strength. Like, I think by 3-betting here, we fold out a lot of the hands that we dominate, and he continues with a lot of the hands that have us pretty crushed. So I definitely like flatting here. And on the flop, I expect him to c-bet a wide range of hands, and I actually think we're ahead quite often. So I think this is a pretty standard call in position. And if an ace or a queen comes, obviously we expect him to barrel again, and we'll call again. So yeah, pre-flop, very standard call, and it's a pretty standard call on the flop too. He bets big, but we have a lot of equity. I mean, I shouldn't say we have a lot of equity. I mean, if he has a pocket pair, then we're behind, but we have position. We have overs, which he's likely to bluff, and we could get value from. So there's just a lot of things going on here. Plus, this guy's loose, so very frequently we are going to have the best hand in that spot. So I would have liked to see a peel on the flop. We're not even floating as much as I just think we have the best hand, and we're going to, see the turn in position and go from there. Ace King offsuit in the small blind versus a looks like a pretty tight player open. I like 3-betting that. We take initiative in the hand, and we can certainly fold out a lot of hands. Well, we can play well post flop with this hand on a lot of different flops. There's sometimes merits to flatting that versus an early position raiser or early or middle position. But I actually don't think. I think 3-betting is fine. I think raising, or I think flatting against this player from this position is fine as well. Versus a cutoff or button, I'm almost always 3-betting that. Because if you get 4-bet from a cutoff or button, then you can 5-bet, get it all in. But if you get 4-bet from early position or middle position, especially from like an 18-15 type player, I know we don't have a lot of hands on this player, but nonetheless, like this would be a 3-bet fold. Anyhow, so on this flop, I actually don't like c-betting this, just because the likely range of hands that this player is going to have are like 9s, 10s, jacks, possibly ace-queen type hand, maybe an ace-king type hand, and we don't even have any diamonds. So like if we had a diamond, we could have more hands to double barrel there, or more cards to double barrel. But without a diamond on a queen, and then nothing else going flop, I just think we're going to get peeled a lot. So when the jack comes, it's like definitely giving up at this point. Basically you're just hoping for an ace or a king to come, and it looks like the player has something like a 10, like 10s or 9s, or maybe like even a queen, like a king queen that he just didn't want to bet, and he does end up having the 10s, so he wasn't going anywhere on the flop or on the turn, especially since he had the 10 of diamonds. Although if we bomb it, he might have, who knows. Nonetheless, I just wanted to highlight this hand as a spot where, it's queen high, but given the way the hand developed pre-flop, and given the kind of range that we put the player on, and the fact that we didn't have any diamonds, I don't think this is a good spot to continuation bet on the flop. 3-4 suited in the big blind. We've got a raise from essentially middle position from a relatively tight player. And I like folding this here. Little suited connectors like that, even in the big blind, are just, they look a lot prettier than they actually are. So, I think if you're throwing these away, I think if one more person would have called, I'm definitely overcalling. But heads up out of position, you're just going to have to get creative to win with them. So, pretty good flop for us. I like check calling here. It's a relatively dry flop. We have a pair. We can hit all kinds of made hands on the turn, and we can even turn some equity with the backdoor spades. So the turn is a king, and I like checking here again. Like, this is a spot that I expect the player to double barrel. If he doesn't have anything, I expect him to double barrel the king. So what I actually like doing is I like check raising here, because if we had a set like 3s or 2s or 7s, then I think we would have check call the flop, just because it's so dry. But on the turn, with the board getting a little bit more scary, I think it's a good spot for us to check raise. So I don't like calling just because I think more often, like, I think he might have the better hand here often, and he's just, betting to get for value. But I also think the king represents a really good card for him to bluff. So if he has a hand like Ace Jack or Jack 10 or whatever, then he's gonna be bluffing that. He could have also actually hit a king if he has a hand like Ace King or King Queen, and if he's a good enough player, he might actually find a reason to fold it. So he's double barreling. He's betting pretty strong, and he gets check raised on the turn. So the turn check raise is still quite a scary move at these stakes. So we're kind of, by check raising the turn, we're kind of turning our hand into a bluff. But I think it's a good enough move, and we actually do have some equity. So if he does end up calling, and we do end up hitting a 3 and a 4, then we can bet for value and get pretty good value there. But it does have that added benefit of folding out some hands that might be better than our hands at this point, like queens or jacks or tens or nines or whatever. So I think check raising the turn here is the best play. If the turn was a king of spades, then I definitely, well, I might like calling better too if it was a king of spades. But with the backdoor spades no longer being available to us, I think the turn check raise just makes the most sense. I think it allows us multiple ways to win, and we might even fold out a better hand. Obviously, if he calls the turn and we don't improve when we check raise the turn, we're totally done with the hand. At that point, I just assume that he has a very, very strong hand and he's not going anywhere. So the way the hand went down, I guess he's debating whether to value bet or not. Or if he has nothing, I guess he's debating whether to bluff or not. But yeah, I think there's just so much more merit to check raising the turn than there is to check calling the turn, even though we might be ahead. So it's like we could be turning our main hand into a bluff, but it's so weak that there's just so much more value in check raising there. So we've got Jack 8 suited, and two people posted out of position here. So let's fold it around. Actually, given the fact that they posted out of position, I like to go ahead and raise that. Just try to take initiative. It's a pretty monster flop for us. I would go ahead and lead that and just try to take it down. We turn the second nuts with a redraw. At this point, we got to bet and hope somebody has a piece of it. So if I had two limpers, just two normal limpers, then I would have liked completing there. But given that the two people posted out of position, I think raising out of the small blind and just trying to take it down pre-flop makes the most sense. So it's a small detail, but definitely affects the way that I play the hand. So the very next hand at the table, we pick up Ace-King offsuit. We have a 4x raise from under the gun from a relative unknown. And this is something that back in the day used to be like an automatic 3-bet, but I actually like calling that in position. If it was in the small blind, I'm kind of going back and forth between 3-betting and flatting, but in position, I definitely like flatting here. We can dominate a lot of different hands. Once both players check, I'd go ahead and take a stab at it. Represent something like 10s or 8s or maybe even jacks, and take it down. So pretty straightforward, but I still think it's important to highlight that I definitely like calling pre-flop there, and once both players check, just put out a bet and go from there. don't check it back. I think if Rattel would have continuation bet that with the ace of hearts, I might peel that once. I think I might have the best hand. He might be c-betting that with a hand like ace jack, king queen, ace queen, etc. So there's a lot of hands that I'm still ahead of on this flop, and if I'm not, then given that I have position and some legitimate drawing, some legitimate outs, I should say, a lot of different good things can happen. So if he c-bets, I'm still calling just because I think I either have the best hand, the combination of having the best hand, possibly, and or position, and the fact that I have the blocker to the nut flush. Yeah, I'm just going to see another card there. So that is it for the video. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And as always, good luck at the tables, guys.